Hi everyone, welcome to my Super Easy Beginners tutorials. I have plenty of them in the Super Easy Beginners playlist, so please do look it up. Today we're going to do some poppies, nice and easy. I'll talk you through what I'm using. So I've got a round number 10, a round number 6, and this is a rigger. It's long thin brush, size number 2. Bit of kitchen towel. I've got a Cotman palette that I've used for all of these Super Easy Beginner playlist ones. I shall pop a link in the description if you wanted a similar palette, but basically use the colours that you have. This is a quarter imperial sheet of Saunders Waterford cut into 4, so this is about 5.5 inches by about 7.5 inches. It's a nice little bit of cotton paper. It's nice and manageable for you when you're learning. So I've got no drawing today. I've got my water pot here, which you should be able to see. I'm going to come on and start to create a bit of a sky. So this is with my round number 10. And I'm wetting about halfway, getting a nice sheen on that top half of the paper, no dull bits, no puddles either. Loading my brush up with water, I'm going to dip into a cerulean blue. So this is the lighter blue that I've got in this palette. I've got cerulean and ultramarine. You could have cobalt blue, that would work perfectly well. You might even have something like a phthalo blue, that would work nicely as well. So you can see that I'm just flicking through little smiles in the sky. So I'm creating a nice spring summer sky. Rinse that brush out, dab it off. I'm dipping back into water because I'm going into neat paint here, and I'm just going to take a darker bit of blue in. So this is ultramarine. Sometimes you have to swizzle the brush around a little bit to activate it. I'm just going to bring that in towards the top. So you've got a bit of a tonal shift and it makes it a much more interesting sky. Then what I'm going to do is swap down to a number 6 round. And this is sap green. So if you didn't have sap green, you might have a viridian green, which is the one that I've got next to this. That would still work. What I'm going to show you is how I'm going to pop in a little bit of brown to make it more natural. So this palette has got lots of different bits for mixing. Let me just take that out. You can see that I keep it nice and clean. This is just so you can see what I'm doing and mixing. I'm going to take some of this thick green into here. So depending on what green you've got, if you haven't got a green, you can make one with yellow and blue. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of brown into it. And that little bit of brown, this is burnt umber, is going to make that green much more natural. Now I'm using a round number 6 because I don't want the paint to go too far. And what I'm going to do is dab in. You'll notice that I've got my brush upright. And I'm going to start to create some soft trees. So I want to vary the height, vary the pressure. This paint is nice and thick, so it's not really going anywhere. If I had a bit more brown in, it'd make it even more natural coloured. I'm going to get some really nice trees happening with very little effort. The paper has a nice sheen to it, so I've still got plenty of time. That's a little bit more green in the mix. So I'm just varying the tone of these trees and shrubs and hedges by just dipping in to different paint. So this is the sap green, neat. So I could take a bit more of that in and make something look a bit fresher. If I dip into a little bit of the ultramarine blue, you'll notice I'm not rinsing my brush in between. I'm keeping the tone quite green. I can bring little bits of darker bits in. So this is just with tiny bits of ultramarine blue. So you start to get a variety of tone. There's very little on my brush. I'm dipping into the neat paint and then I'm moving that paint around. Too much in it will look too vibrant and thick. See, I've got that really nice tree and hedgerow feel, just like that. It was really easy. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. It's settled really lovely. You've got some really nice tone in here. I'm going to just come on with a bit more water at the bottom. So I'm going to come right the way up. We're going to get a nice sheen. This is with my round number 10. And come across and get a nice coating on here. Okay, so here I have got some lemon yellow, or you could use cadmium yellow, you could use cadmium yellow pale. There's all different variations. This is just what I've got in this kit. Now, when you're doing poppies, what you've got to think about, it's notoriously hard. When you've got a poppy field, there's red and green. Red and green are complementary colours, and when they mix together, they make brown. So one of the little tips in making this work is to take more yellow in. You see how I'm just activating this yellow? I don't think I've even used this one yet. Looks brand new. So I'm just getting it a nice sweep in. So I've got it paler towards the back, stronger towards the front. So that's giving a real good sense of distance. Now, poppies can be a variety of colours. I'm going to go with this cadmium red. I'm getting lots and lots on the brush, so there's water on there, but I'm really loading it up nice and thick. Now what I have here is some kitchen towel. Now the reason I'm going to do this is because I want to protect my sky. So this brush is loaded with red. I'm going to pop my finger here and I'm going to hit. This is to start to create some random poppies. You see? If I just dip into a bit more water and then the red again, I'm going to create some bigger poppies. So what I want is smaller poppies towards the back, bigger poppies towards the front, and that whole random throwing of the paint just helps it look more random. If you come on with a brush, you tend to get too much of a pattern. I'm going to pick up my round number 6. And I'm coming into that sap green. And then what I'm going to do now is just basically start to blend through a little bit, keeping it towards the bottom. And I will eliminate some of the red. It will make it look like a natural shadow. So I'm flicking through. I'm just going to keep loading my brush up, dipping back into water. Now if I'd done this bit first, I would end up with non-vibrant poppies. They'd end up all muted. So this is why I'm doing it this way. because I can keep and preserve some of that very vibrant red. So what I'm thinking about all the time is that I need this to look fairly random. So I don't want to create a pattern. So all the time I'm making sure and thinking where I'm dabbing that I'm not creating any sort of pattern that throws my eye. I want to keep it nice and neutral. Dipping back in, and within here, whilst it's still damp, I can bring in some swathes of green. It doesn't matter if you eliminate some of the red, it's absolutely fine. That horizontal stroke is giving it a sense of shadow, a sense of distance. You're just dotting through, leaving some, coming over others. Rinse my brush out. I'm just going to dip back into this cerulean blue. Tonally, this is going to give a little bit more interest. So I'm just sweeping a little bit of that through whilst it's still damp enough. Dip my brush into the water. Add a few little dabs in here. See, that's coming together really lovely as a poppy field. If I mix some of the ultramarine blue, in fact I've got some nice dry mix here that I know is the same, ultramarine blue and burnt umber together, you get a near on black. And what you can do is just dot into some of these bigger poppies. I want you to vary where you pop the dot. They're not all dead centre, just so you're getting a different angle of poppy every single time. It's these little tips that make it stand as more natural. And because it's still damp and the paint's quite thick, it'll stay put, but it'll just blend a little bit, which is what you want. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. So we are nearly done. That's not very clean. So we're going to come back into the cadmium red. What I'm going to do is just accentuate a couple of these poppies. So I'm just dipping round to make them more bold. So you can see that they're standing forward. So it's these bigger ones that I'm worried about. And I don't want to do too many. Less is always more. You want a sense of depth and distance. So just those few work really nicely. So that was with my round number 6. Now I'm going to come down to my rigger. And then I'm picking up some of the sap green and a little bit of the ultramarine because I want it to be a bit darker. And I can just bring in a few stems. So to these ones that we've just painted, so I'm just bolding up little bits. And you can pop in a few little bits of leaves towards the bottom. Doesn't have to be a lot there. It's just a little bit of a wiggle, really. Okay, and then with that very dark grey, I don't need to come back into the poppies, but what I'm going to do, because I don't know if you'll even be able to see this on the camera, but I have got some red splatters in the sky. So this was me being careful. I'm going to make them into little birds. So I'm resting on my little finger, and it's like doing a little tick. I'm just going to have to move this out of the way a second so I can rest. Little tick. So where I've splattered and not been careful, I'm going to change that into little birds, which is just like a very, very fine tick. Okay, so I'll dry that off and take the tape off. And there we go. So we're all finished. A nice, simple beginner's poppy field. So you've learnt how to do the wet in wet trees, how to create that lovely sense of shadow, how to mix those reds and greens and not get brown, create a sense of distance, how to cover up splatters into birds. And I shall also show you, this is Saunders waterwood paper, and you can see on the other side, so you think it's an expensive paper, but you can use both sides. So that's coming in a florals beginners session quite soon. So it really just shows you that you can use both sides of the paper, so it's not as expensive as you think, and it's a really lovely paper. If you've enjoyed today, please do like, subscribe and share, and I'll pop the beginners playlist here and another video here, and I shall see you next time.